The Trump administration says they have the framework of a Gaza peace deal, but is it still a long way from being accepted by either Israel or Hamas? Or could we actually see an end to the fighting? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. So, before we, of course, get too far into it, I want to mention that you guys know that I am a full time content creator. I'm a dad of 2 kids under 2 and a triathlete. In fact, I'm training for a half Ironman distance race right now, and I need all the caffeine I can get. That's why I created Strike Gum, right? It's got all the caffeine of an energy drink in each individual piece, right? So literally, instead of consuming this entire thing that's going to make you feel like absolute garbage and is packed with sugar, you can get the same energy from a single piece of Strike Gum. Plus, it's got 100 milligrams alpha GPC, 0 sugar, so it's not going to screw up your diet. And best of all, Strike Gum's having its fall sale. Buy 2 of anything and get a free third of whether it's a single pack, a 5-pack, or your tray. It's the way to get the energy you need where and when you need it. That's why it's the energy gum of choice for everyone from North Sea oil rig workers to Ukrainian drone pilots to yours truly. Plus, it's made in the USA and veteran owned. Links in the description. Okay, so let's talk about the Gaza ceasefire thing. So, this is the war actually today is hitting its 2-year mark with Hamas's terror attack on Israel. And on Friday, Hamas said it actually partially agreed to a 20-point plan introduced by the White House to end the fighting in Gaza. Israel said it accepted the plan's first phase, agreeing in principle to a limited troop pullback tied to a hostage handover, but framed the acceptance as conditional, saying Hamas must be disarmed as any part of any final deal. Now, again, a partial deal is not the same thing as a deal. You can't partially buy a car. You can't partially buy a house. So, saying that, hey, the sides are willing to accept some parts of a deal or a framework of a deal is still a long way away, right? Now, on Sunday, using his only negotiating tactic, President Trump told CNN that Hamas would face, quote, complete obliteration if it refuses to relinquish control of Gaza. While Israeli Prime Minister said he's on board with ending Israel's bombing campaign. Now, this is, one of the tactics you can use to negotiate, but generally it's not all that favorable. But that's the only one Trump seems to be willing to use. Do what I say, or else I'll blow you to smithereens. But you might recall Trump made the same threat at least 3 different times to Hamas. And all of those times, Hamas, the president just simply backs down and doesn't do it. Again, issuing bombastic threats is just par for the course for the president. So, but in fact, it sounds like delegations from Israel, Hamas, and the United States will be joined by mediators from Egypt and Qatar, will meet in an Egyptian Red Sea resort town, which is fascinating. You might ask, well, why isn't it taking place in Qatar? Well, the answer, lads, is because the Hamas negotiators in Qatar, Israel tried to kill them. So the fact that Hamas is negotiating with Israel at all, right, is actually kind of shocking. Now, Israeli forces, the plan, we're going to break down the plan here. Let's take a look at some of the 20-point plan here. And some of it is like, it's not terrible, but it's also not great, right? 1, Gaza will be de-radicalized, terror-free zone that does not pose a threat to its neighbors. Remember, this is actually significant because a terror-free zone, Hamas is a terror group, and it says terrorist groups can't operate there. So the question is, does this grant use of force to Israel? Like, who's going to make sure it's terror-free? Who's going to make sure a different terror group like Palestinian Islamic Jihad or something doesn't set up shop, right? Because again, is this going to grant blanket permission? Or is this just a statement of good faith to say, hey, Hamas promises to abandon terror as a method and promise to have a live and let live policy with Israel. It says Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefit of the people of Gaza who have suffered more than enough. Again, redeveloped is a weird word, but sure, reconstructed. Right? It says if both sides agree to this proposal, the war will immediately end. Israeli forces will withdraw to the agreed upon line to prepare for hostage release. During this time, all military operations, including aerial and artillery bombardment, will be suspended and battle lines will remain frozen until conditions are met for complete staged withdrawal. Interesting. I mean, that's not bad. Within 72 hours of Israel publicly accepting the agreement, all hostages, alive and deceased, will be returned. Once all hostages are released, Israel released 250 life sentence prisoners plus 1,700 Gazans who were detained after October 7th, including all women and children detained in that context. For every Israeli hostage whose remains are released, Israel will release the remains of 15 deceased Gazans. Again, nothing in here too controversial. This is all pretty good stuff, right? Once hostages returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and to decommission their weapons will be given amnesty. Members of Hamas who wish to leave Gaza will be provided safe passage to receiving countries. Upon acceptance of the agreement, full aid will be immediately sent to the Gaza Strip. At a minimum, aid quantities will be consistent with what was introduced in January 19, 2025 agreement regarding humanitarian aid, including rehabilitation of infrastructure, rehabilitation of hospitals and bakeries, and the entry of necessary equipment to remove rubble and open roads. Entry of distribution and aid in Gaza Strip will proceed without interference from the two parties through the UN and its agencies, the Red Crescent, and other international institutions not associated in any manner with either party. Right? Opening of the Rafah crossing both directions will have the same mechanism as the previous agreement that fell apart. Now, here's where things get kind of dicey. Right? Gaza will be governed under a temporary transitional government of technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee. Who gets to decide, right? If a committee is apolitical, right? Responsible for delivering day-to-day running of public services and municipalities to the people of Gaza. This committee will be made up of qualified Palestinians and international experts with oversight supervision by a new international transitional body, the Board of Peace, which will be headed and chaired by President Donald J. Trump, with other members and heads of state to be announced, including former Prime Minister Tony Blair. Now, again, this already could be seen as problematic because both of those people are seen as being deeply associated with Israel. So you're talking about a group of apolitical Palestinians handpicked by Israeli allies is a pretty tough one. Again, this body will set the framework and handle funding for redevelopment of Gaza until the Palestinian Authority it's time to complete its reform program as outlined in various proposals, including Trump's peace plan in 2020 and a Saudi-French proposal. So interesting, they say there's going to be a transitional government headed by a committee, chaired by President Trump, and then it'll transition to Palestinian Authority, who needs to get its act together. This is great if you can do it. A Trump economic development plan to rebuild and energize Gaza will be created by convening panels of experts who have helped birth some of the thriving modern city miracles in the Middle East. Holy shit. Many thoughtful investment proposals and exciting development ideas have been crafted by well-meaning international groups and will be considered to synthesize security and government's frameworks to attract and facilitate these investments that will create jobs, opportunity, and hope for future Gaza. Oh man, this is rich. Sticking in a real estate deal. We're going to build sure. Like, great. Special economic zone with preferred tariff and access rates negotiated with participating countries. Those can actually be pretty effective. No one will be forced to leave Gaza, and those who wish to leave will be free to do so and free to return, this would be huge. This would be a huge change. We will encourage people to stay and offer them the opportunity to build a better Gaza. Again, some of these, like, what does that mean? We will encourage people to stay. And these are like outlines of principles of what a peace deal would look like, but man, it's so light on details. Hamas and other factions agreed to not have any role in the governance of Gaza directly or indirectly in any form. All military terror and offensive infrastructure, including tunnels and weapon production facilities, will be destroyed and not rebuilt. There will be a process of demilitarization of Gaza under the supervision of independent monitors, which will include placing weapons permanently beyond use through an agreed process of decommissioning supported by an internationally funded buyback and reintegration program, all verified by independent monitors. New Gaza will be fully committed to building a prosperous economy and a peaceful coexistence with its neighbors. Again, the fact that here's the thing. Hamas and other factions will not agree, will have no role in Gaza. Like, who's left, guys? Like, who's left to govern Gaza? And also Hamas and other factions, like, that could be anyone. The Palestinian Authority could be another faction. So again, are you saying that you like there's so many details here that are missing that this is still so far away, right? A guarantee will be provided by regional partners to ensure Hamas and the other factions comply with their obligations, that New Gaza poses no threat to its neighbors and people. So basically, okay, so essentially a NATO style security guarantee for Gaza. Interesting. From Arab countries. I think that's better. Sometime in the future, we'll totally come up with an international stabilization force to deploy in Gaza immediately. Okay, so we'll develop a temporary force, but it'll also deploy immediately. This is a big problem, guys. Joint forces are not something you can just conjure up. The ISF will train and provide support to vetted Palestinian police forces in Gaza and will consult with Jordan and Egypt who have extensive experience in the field. That's actually not a bad plan. Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza. The ISF establishes control and stability. The IDF will withdraw based on standards, milestones, and timeframes linked to demilitarization that will be agreed upon by the IDF, ISF, the guarantors, the United States. Again, this is like sub-treaty. This is so vague. In the event Hamas delays or rejects the proposal, it will proceed in the terror-free areas. Okay, above, including the in the event Hamas delays or rejects the proposal, the above, including the scaled-up aid operation, will proceed in the okay. So areas controlled by the ISF will continue to operate in this way, and areas where Hamas operates will not. Interfaith dialogue will try to change the mindsets of Palestinians and Israelis by emphasizing benefits derived from peace. Good luck propagandizing Israel. I'm sure they seem to love that. Right? PA for a reform program is faithfully carried out to find place credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, which ran as an aspiration of all Palestinian people. Like, dude, you guys should try to come up, be a state. There's a two-state solution. We'll figure it out later. There's a lot of this. There's some big, some of these are feel-good things that can't ever be verified. Like, what does it mean to be terror-free? Again, some of these are points that themselves would be tremendously contentious treaty negotiations. Again, I'm here to be like, listen, if this gets them to stop fighting, if this gets some aid into Gaza and stops the starvation, I'm here for it, right? I'm not here cheering for continued bloodshed. And I think that I look at this, and what I'm struck with is it's really light on details. And again, we've heard, for example, that far-right Israeli factions are actually mad that the Gazans will be able to stay in Gaza. That, again, Hamas is, some of its more militant sides are saying, hey, you can't simply say that we have no role in governance anymore. But there's a bunch of other problems, and I think ultimately the problem is going to be that a lot of the details here are based on subjective opinions of someone, and it's not clear who will get to declare things, right? So who says the committee is apolitical? Who says someone is an apolitical technocrat versus too politically associated with one side or another? Well, Tony Blair and Trump, again, those are two very pro-Israel figures. Are you going to include some people the Palestinians trust? If so, who? The King of Jordan, maybe? Maybe a Saudi crown prince, or his designated representative. Those are options. But again, who's going to make these decisions? Who's going to decide if a faction is too associated with terrorism to be in the Gaza governance system, right? And there's just so much vagary here that I want it. I want there to be less war, more peace, fewer dead kids. But And again, there's optimism, right? Like the fact that Netanyahu says, "Hey, I can stomach this," and the fact that Hamas says, "I can kind of stomach this," right, is at least progress. And I want it to succeed. Like people are like, "Oh, you're a Trump hater." I'm like, "Nah, dude. I just think he's not very good at his job." And but he may pull this off. He may actually pull this off. This is as close as we've come to some kind of solution in the war. But again, the the there's just so much that remains to be seen. And it's really hard because these technocratic, detailed negotiations, they're going to have to take place with Hamas not really willing to have their actual people at a table with Israelis because the Israelis have shown that they're going to bomb them. And so Hamas goes, listen, I'm not going to, we're going to have to do things through proxies. And that's a very slow process. And yeah, it really is intriguing to see how this 2-year war can hopefully come to an end. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. Thank you so much to our Colonel tier members, guys, like Paul Wheeler, Michael Clean, Jeff Davies, Francis Karius, Tom Sanderson, Junior Cuesta, and all of our Lieutenant tier members. You guys and your support over on combatvetnews.com make a tremendous difference for me, and that link is also in the description. Thanks.